we left off here. And we have 3 objects in the game. We have the boss, we have the dragon, and we have the demon. Now remember that the demons are spawned from the boss. So right here in this step event, we're rolling the dice, and if the dice comes up as a 1, then we create a new demon. We want to do something similar with the babies. The babies are also going to be spawned by the boss monster. So we're going to right click on sprites, and we're going to say create sprite. Here is where we give it a meaningful name, so we'll call it sprite baby. And then we'll load the sprite from our resources folder. Now, where are these located? If you have an S drive, it would be out on the S drive under game design. Click on evil clutches and then resources. But again, we're doing the baby sprite. We're going to do the nice babies, not the evil babies. So we have our sprite now. Now let's create the object, the baby object. And we'll choose the baby sprite. Now the babies are going to have specific behavior when they're first created. And what we want to happen is when the baby gets spawned by the boss, we want the baby to go horizontally across the room, but we want to do it slower than the demons. So we go to add event, create. So we're adding a create event. When the baby gets created, what do we want to happen? We want it to move. How do we want it to move? Well, we want to move to the left. And the speed we're going to choose is 8. So it'll be 8 pixels per frame, which is somewhat fast. So that'll get the baby moving. Let's just see if that happens. Just for testing, I'm just going to put a baby in the room directly rather than waiting for it to spawn. So I can put a baby maybe down here. And our hope is that the baby, when it gets created, will just start motoring across the room. Okay? Let's see what happens. I always like to test things as I go, just to see if things are working. Okay, so there's the baby moving across the screen. Okay. Now we don't want to put babies on the screen to begin with. Again, we want these to be spawned by the boss. So we're going to right click on the baby here in the room, and that'll make the baby disappear. Okay, so now we have to do the spawning part. So we go into the object boss. So find object boss on your list here on the folder. Double click on that, and that'll take us to the boss sprite. Now if you remember back when we were doing demons, inside the step event, which happens every frame, we're going to roll the dice, and if we happen to get a 1 out of 50 sides to the dice, then we're going to actually create a demon. The frame rate, the default frame rate for game design is 30 frames per second, or 30 steps per second. So now we want to do the same thing with the baby. So we're going to go to the control tab, we're going to grab the dice again, we'll pull it out here. And this time we want this to happen less frequently. So to make it less frequent, we have to increase the number of sides to our dice. So I'm saying 100. Then I say OK. So what happens if we actually do roll a 1 on this 100-sided dice? Well, we're going to create a baby this time. So we go here to the main 1 tab, we grab the first icon there and drag it into the action window. And we choose Object Baby. And we want to make the baby be created relative to the position of the boss. So we choose the relative option here. And my hope is that when we do this, we'll get babies to spawn, perhaps a little less frequently than the demons, but they'll still happen. Okay, so there's a demon, there's a baby. Those babies are coming at you pretty fast. So the babies just move horizontally across the screen. That works well. Now have we done the part where when the demon hits the dragon, the game's over? Okay, so let's look at that and how we might do that. I just want to verify we haven't done that yet. Here's the demons, they hit the dragon. Yeah, so let me show you how to get that to work. So you go into the demon, and we have to add an event. And this is a collision event. So we go to add event, and we say collision, then ask, well, which object are you talking about when the demon collides with what? In this case, it's the dragon. It'll create this collision event here. And what we want to happen is that this is a pretty difficult game in that only one demon has to touch you and you lose the game. There is no lives, there's no health, anything like that. And we'll fix that later maybe, but we want to show the high score, so we click on score and just drag that on. This one here, drag that onto the board. So we'll show the high score screen. The user will have to respond to that saying okay, or they may be typing their names because they got a high score. Once they're done with that window, we want to restart the game. And restart game is here on main 2. So drag that out there too. You also might want to double check these other two. We don't want the demons to kind of go on forever, so once they go outside the room, we want them to destroy themselves. So we add an outside room event. So you click on add event, other, outside room. That creates this event handler, and then basically what we want to do when it goes outside the room is we want to destroy it, or have the demon destroy itself. So I drag this little trash can on. It's on the main one. Just double check that that's set. Just like the boss, we want to bounce off the top and the bottom. So again, we'll do the same thing. Intersect boundary, and then if it does intersect the boundary, then we want to reverse our vertical direction. So your demon at this point should have a create event that gets it moving, collision with the dragon that stops the game, outside room that destroys the demon, and intersect boundary that makes it change direction. So now it's time to turn our attention to the baby. So here's the baby. We created it. We got it moving. But what should happen when the baby collides with the mother dragon? So let's add that event. So we're on the baby. We say add event, and then collision with the dragon. So when the baby hits the dragon, well, what do we want to happen? Well, that's a good thing. The mother just rescued the baby. So we probably want to give the player a good score on that. So you click on the score tab. You want to grab this first one, set score. Just pull that into the action window. I'm thinking we'll put in 300. We also want to make it relative because we want it to add to the score. What relative means is add this to whatever the score is. If you don't check this, what you'll do is the highest score you'll ever get is 300 because it keeps overriding the other scores that are there. So make sure you click on relative. So we've set the score, but we have to do one other thing. Once the baby touches the mother, we don't need to have the baby on the screen anymore. So we'll have the baby destroy itself. So you go to the main 1 tab, grab the little trash can, or the recycle bin, and say okay. So the baby, as soon as it touches the dragon, it's going to delete itself. We also want that same thing to happen when the baby goes outside the room. So once the baby's fully outside the room, and that's under the add event, other, outside room, it's that first one. Once that happens, then we want the baby to destroy itself there as well. So let's try that and see if the baby, when it collides with the mother, disappears and the score goes up. Let's find out. So there's a baby. Ooh. I got 600 points so far. Ooh. I don't know this baby I'm missing. Okay. Oh. Type in my high score, and then I'm playing the game again. All right, so next up is fireballs. Fireballs. First, let's create the fireball sprite. It's right here. You say fireball. And we're going to load our sprite from the same location we loaded the demons and the babies. So here. We save that, and then we create a fireball object. So we right click on object, say create object, object fireball. And so what do we want this fireball to do when it gets created? Well, we want it to zip across the screen, going from left to right. So we add a create event. So add event and create. And then we grab this move fixed. It's the top left one. Set the arrow to go from the left to the right. And we're going to set the speed pretty fast, 32. So the fireballs go really quick. Now, there's a couple things that we need to take into account. What happens when the fireball goes outside the room? What happens when the fireball hits a demon? What happens to the fireball when it hits the boss? And what happens to the fireball when it hits the baby? Anytime you add a new object to the room, you have to think how this object is going to interact with all the other objects in the game. Alright, so let's do the easy one. First we add an event, collision event this time. And I say, well, if the fireball collides with the demon, what we want to do is probably increase the score. That's kind of good to kill demons. So we're going to go to the score tab and drag on this first one, set score. And we're going to give the player 100 points for killing the demon. And we're going to make that relative. Let's make that relative. And that will add 100 to the score every time you kill the demon. What else do we want to happen when the fireball hits a demon? Well, we want it to destroy the demon. Now, what you want to do is just say other. So, other is always the thing the fireball runs into. The programmer already knows it's a demon, so you don't have to say demon here. You can just say other. What are we getting rid of? We're getting the thing the fireball crashed into, the other thing. Okay. But we also want to get rid of the fireball as well, because the fireball gets used up when it hits a demon. So we don't want to just go plowing through the room. So let's also destroy the fireball as well, so self. So both the fireball and the demon disappear when they collide with each other. So that's a collision event with the demon. When the fireball hits the boss, well, we're not going to do anything with that. Fireball just goes right past the boss. The boss doesn't get affected. So we don't really need to put anything. What about the baby? Yeah, it's not good. Killing babies is not nice. No killing babies. And you should lose a lot of points for that. So collision with the baby this time. Again, we want both things to be destroyed. The baby, the other thing, and also the fireball again. But we also want to set the score to something somewhat negative. So we're going to take 300 points away. So we go to the score tab. We're going to subtract 300 points. So we have to put in a negative 300. And we want it to be relative because it's going to add negative 300 to the score, and that will decrease the score by 300. So I think we covered all our bases here. We do, once the fireball goes outside the room, we want to get rid of it. So the last event we do for fireball is we say add event, then other, and then outside room. So what we're saying here is that when the object fireball goes outside the room, we want to have it destroy itself. So you get the waste back, or the recycle bin again, and drag it into. Now the The fireball didn't collide with anything, it just went outside the room, so there's no other. So we had a question, well, how do we shoot this fireball then? We'll go to the dragon object and we're going to add a new keyboard event. And this is the space bar. And so let's choose the space bar. And when they hit the space bar, we want to create a fireball relative to the position of the dragon, because the fireball needs to come out of the dragon. So make sure when you say create instance, you say self fireball, coordinates are 0, 0, at least for now, and then relative. Okay, so let's see if we can fire fireballs and destroy demons and save babies and destroy babies maybe. So here I am, I shoot the fireball, and we find a problem. Isn't there a problem? I'm like spamming all these shots, killing everything in my path. I mean, there's a couple ways you could do this. Yeah, you could say press or key press instead of a keyboard event. Another way you could do it is you could count up the number of fireballs. So you go to the control tab. When they hit the space, you count up how many fireballs there are, either on the screen or in the room. So we're counting up the fireballs. And if it's equal to 0, meaning there's no other fireballs on the screen, then you can shoot. So you can only have one fireball on the screen at a time. So the change I made was I went into the space keyboard event, and before I create another fireball, I double check to see that if there's no other fireballs on the screen. So that should control your rate of fire pretty easily. Okay, so now when I fire, I only get one fireball at a time. And yes, you can get a negative score in this game. Oh, I got the one fireball? Sure. Okay, so I went into the keyboard event for space, and then I added this count to the beginning of it. So you go to the control menu, drag on this count. We're going to count how many fireballs are alive right now. When it sees this one, or actually when it doesn't see any other fireballs in the room, then it creates another fireball. But if it does see it, it's just going to skip this next one. Okay? Yeah, so I think that's probably it. The problem though is our fireballs are kind of weird. They're kind of starting behind the head of the mommy dragon, right? Like coming out of her ear. That's typically not where fireballs come out of. It'd be nice if the fireball came out from where her mouth is. So we're going to have to offset the fireball a little bit. See, right now it's starting behind the dragon's head. So when we create the instance of the fireball, we're going to scoot it over a little bit. So we want to move it about 100 pixels to the right. So this is in the create instance in the dragon when they hit the space bar. We're going to move it 100 pixels to the right and about 10 pixels down the screen. Boy. Okay, so now the fireball is coming out of the right spot on the dragon. Okay. So that's it on fireballs.